Welcome to Kingsman Software's Beyond the Build podcast. At Kingsman, we pride ourselves on building enterprise-quality software, and we have the privilege of meeting some pretty interesting people along the way. Come join us to meet the visionaries, the disruptors, the entrepreneurs, and the innovators that envision new technology solutions and then bring them to life. Come join us to hear what happens beyond the build. Welcome to Kingsman Software's Beyond the Build podcast. I'm Kevin Carney, your host for today, one of the managing partners here at Kingsman Software. Our guests today are Sony Gabriel and Joe Curian, two of the co-founders of TRaiCE's. Welcome, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you, Kevin.
So we're doing this remotely today because we've got people in all different time zones. So Sony, you're in India, you're in IST. Joe, you're over in LA.
Yes.
Okay, so we're spanning what, like 12 hours of time zones. So thanks for joining us remotely. So I guess the question is really, how did we connect? If you're in India and you're in LA, how is the connection to Charlotte? So just give a little background how we met. I saw TRaiCE's presented at RevTech Labs Venture 135 last fall, and it's during the demo day, and it just struck a chord with me, the offering that you guys have, because it's a novel way of using AI, at least in my opinion. And it's more additive to the credit risk management process. It's not trying to automate an existing process. It's additive to the process. So that kind of struck a chord with me. And, it stuck with me. But then coincidentally, one of your advisors, Barry Greenblatt, approached me to join him in a panel conversation for the Global Association of Risk Professionals, GARP. And Joe, you were on the panel as well. And so I'm like, okay, this, like, the universe is sending me a message. I need to go talk to you guys, understand more about your offering. And so why don't you guys explain a little bit about what TRaiCE's does and how you guys connected with Charlotte, with RevTech Labs. And just give the brief overview.
Great. Thanks for having us, Kevin. It's a pleasure to be on this podcast with you. Very excited. We actually got into the RevTech Labs as part of Class 18. It was actually an interesting time that we spent at Charlotte as part of the RevTech Labs program. Now, what we do at TRaiCE's, which got RevTech Labs interested, was how we monitor risk using unstructured data. If you know, financial institutions have different risks that they have to manage: credit risk, market risk, third-party risk. Now, they primarily use, when it comes to credit risk at least, they use structured financial data to monitor the health of the businesses. Now, you know that it comes with a lag. Now, financial statements are usually annually or quarterly at best. You have the monthly bureau reports and then the internal performance data. But the high frequency signals you always get from all the digital footprint, which is aka unstructured data, because it's non-financial, it's in all kinds of format: text, video, image, whatnot. Now, you can get leading indicators of risk from all of this unstructured data, which could be from news, social media platforms, review platforms, the Yelp, the Better Business Bureau, and the like. And what we do at TRaiCE's is leverage this unstructured data to find early indicators of risk. And we go one step further, convert that to a score. So think of it like a FICO score based on all the digital footprint. And this is high frequency, so you can create a score every day, right? And that's what TRaiCE's does. And Joe is the domain expert. I would like Joe to chime in. I just gave the high-level overview of what we do.
Yeah. Thanks, Sonny. So thank you, Kevin, for having us here. Like you said in the beginning, I think that additive nature, right? We are adding a new dimension into risk managers toolkit. That is unstructured data, because that's also coming from my own experience. I've been in the business lending in last 13 years. So the full spectrum, like small business to consumer, the commercial lending to entire corporate lending space. So what we found is, like Sony just explained, they primarily use the three pieces of data, right? Bureau data, internal data and financial statements, but always this unstructured piece is missed out. So that is what we wanted to solve. We go out to the internet and extract every piece of information around a business, right? It could be discussions, it could be news, or it could be reviews and other things, and then use a large language model to convert that into a scorecard. So now, when it is a scorecard, say scorecard like FICO, totally based on unstructured data. Now the risk managers know what to do with it, right? Or you can blend it with other things. You can monitor it on a time series basis, say, okay, 20-point drop into the scorecard and I need to pay attention to. So we developed the whole application that fits into the workflow of a banker. That's so, we specialized it. That's the workflow integration is something that we offer in addition to an AI offer.
Okay. So how do you go back to Charlotte? Like what connected you to RevTech Labs?
RevTech Labs actually invited us to apply for the program.
Oh, did they? Okay.
And they have a team that scouts for interesting fintechs. We were invited to apply. We applied and then go through. We found the program very interesting and it was very useful for us. That's where we found some of our advisors. We had a really good team of advisors who helped us build the right use cases, got us the introductions. So the whole program was very useful for us. But that's how we got connected to Charlotte and connected to Barry, who is now our advisor.
Okay. So yeah, they provide a little bit of RevTech Labs provides a little bit of investment. They match up with advisors. Those advisors hopefully get some network connections and introductions and industry network effect. But
Yes, right.
but then you also have a little bit of a pedigree, right? You've got now branding behind you that you were accepted into that program. I think Dan Roselli was telling me that the acceptance rate into RevTech Labs is like hard. It's harder to get into RevTech Labs than it is to get into Harvard. So you're in
10%.
pretty good company, right?
I think it's a single-digit acceptance almost from the number of applicants to how many make it to the program.
Yeah, so
I still remember Dan was very much involved in the selection process in early on, and I think we stood out because of the fintech sandbox. We were admitted to fintech sandbox. It's another accelerator program that they provide us or connect with a lot of data providers, so we could get data from those guys and try to develop new solutions. So I think admission to that was a kind of a standing out feature for us. So RevTech Labs invited us to apply.
Okay, so you keep building on those, right? You get those items on your company resume.
And we were also looking for bankers as the primary, right? The solution is for bankers. So Charlotte is a banking hub. So all that, so for example, I would think, there are a lot of other accelerator programs, but RevTech Lab was one of the, real good ones for fintech who is in the banking area, right? So, because of the access to the market.
Right. Okay. So how did you get to where you are today? Like there's how did you get the band together, right? I think there was your brother, you went to school with your brother and you guys had a prior company and your advisors. Like give the whole origin story.
Sure. So Joe and I know each other for almost 20 years. His brother and my brother and Joe went to college together. And the other co-founder, Geeta, and we did our undergrad together. So I know Geeta for the last 30 years. So it's a close-knit founding team in the sense we know each other from the past. We also ran a company before this where Joe was actually involved as an advisor. So Geeta and I were the founders, Joe was the advisor. So kind of like the same team which worked before as well. So in 2016, we founded Minerva Software, where we primarily did product engineering. We built products for global clients. And the key differentiation was that we built products that leverage data. So initially, we built the web applications to collect all the data. Then we build the AI ML models on top of it. And that was our gig. Now, interestingly, there was one client that we worked with, a very large marketing firm out of Canada. And for them, we did a lot of work around sentiment analysis, natural language processing, which today is more popular as large language models and Gen AI. But we've been playing with this since 2017, 2018 timeframe. We built the entire product, and they went on to raise a truckload of money with the product that we built. But gave us a lot of expertise in this place. And that's when Joe was like, there's a problem statement in my line of work where what you're doing with unstructured data combined with knowing the business can help us build a product, and that's how we formed TRaiCE.
Right.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Joe.
Just to add a little details there, I think I was their advisor that time, and it was also the COVID time. COVID just hit, and then I had this idea, and I was watching them closely. So they were doing a lot of good work in the area of unstructured data. They started with IBM Watson, for example, right? It was like pretty, and then switched to BERT when so BERT was released in 2018, but 2020 these guys were 2019 they were using it.
Okay.
Now then I realized, oh, this is great. So then I present this idea. Then so I think the team was way ahead. So, for example, we launched the product, almost 18 months before ChatGPT. And when we launched, nobody would know, what is LLM is. We had to explain them what is large language models and things like that.
Yeah.
So, for a generic audience, right? I mean, so way ahead of, where everybody was. So that's another thing. From an outsider standpoint, I realized that, okay, this team is great in building product, and especially in the very innovative products. So
it's a big differentiator, right? Because every company I talk to right now, they're all using AI, and Kingsman as well. But the difference here is that you guys have been using it well before it became popular, and I think you also use it because there's a distinction here between Gen AI and machine learning, right? I mean, you guys are using it on the machine learning side, which is a lot more complicated and less accessible than it is on the Gen AI, right? It's easy to go to ChatGPT and create a term paper, or go to Midjourney and create an image, but the machine learning you guys are doing is at a much more complicated level.
Correct. I mean, I think the common thing is the large language model, right? Both of this. So we use a large language model to create an application. So Gen AI applications, right? Like ChatGPT is another application which is more elaborate, a lot more elaborate. But this is more like a custom, specialized software meant for certain use cases. So that's the difference. Common thing is large language model, right? That's the only thing.
Right. Yeah. Well, I like that you bring together. Sony, you and Geeta had a capability that you're using for your clients, and it sounds like that one client in Canada specifically, but I'm sure other clients as well. And then Joe, you came at it from a business standpoint and said, I need something. I could use that capability over here in this particular business case. So pulling those two things together, it's not I have a capability and I'm looking for a reason to use it. You're actually using a direct scenario that Joe, coming up through the ranks of business lending, needed, right? Because like you mentioned in the beginning, Sony, the financials are looking off the back of the boat. You can see where you've been. This is where we were 4 months ago, because by the time Q1 financials are in the books in the end of March, and then they're finally audited at the end of April. Mm-hmm. And then they get to the bank and they're taking a couple of weeks to do the statement spreading. Like anything that you could surmise from that information already happened. Right. And it's not actionable. And so I love the fact that you said the high frequency, that you can be proactive in either turning down a credit line or increasing interest rate or asking for more collateral or invoking some of the covenants. Like there are things you can do.
Yeah.
I think it's great.
And Joe had this number once. He said, 95% of your risk comes from 5% of your portfolio. Like,
Oh, all
now,
right.
how do you understand that 5% of your risky portfolio? By the time you do your quarterly analysis and spreading and all of it, that picture would have entirely changed. The 5% that you actually had with those financial statements is no longer the 5% because things can change daily, can
Mhm.
change hourly as well, right? So that's where the value comes in.
Right, right. So just finishing up the origin story. You guys have got some pretty good degrees, college degrees here, right? I think Sony, you went to IIM, and Joe, you went
Yeah,
to
so
IIT.
yes,
Can you guys explain that a little bit? Because those are like the Ivy Leagues of India, right?
they are. So I did my undergrad in computer science. So that's where Geeta and I did our undergrad together. So we did in one of the universities here in India. And then I went on to build my career. And then midway through my career, I did an executive management program at Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore. That was in 2008-9 timeframe. Geeta went on to do her master's in computer science from University of Illinois at Chicago. That was 97, 98. So yeah, she's a master's in computer science. I did my management degree, and Joe will talk about what his background.
Yeah, I had a conventional economics and statistic training, and I joined IIT in their PhD program. I was admitted to, but I did not finish my PhD. I just did 2 years and graduated with an MPhil. But that is where I was introduced to something called SAS. I don't know you know about a SAS,
Sure,
statistical
yeah.
analysis system.
Mhm.
So I got really excited with all statistical modeling, all that part, and so I picked up a lot of skills there, and that kind of changed my career from a conventional economics guy to an analytics person. That's where the change happened. So yeah, going to that institute helped quite a bit because of the infrastructure and other things. So otherwise I wouldn't have seen it. Maybe I wouldn't have ended up in G or anything like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you work for some great big companies, right? Like
Yeah.
HSBC and Wells Fargo and GE Capital.
Yeah. Correct. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I guess where I'm going is that you two guys have, and Geetha as well, have a really impressive background. This is not just some guy with an idea, right? You guys have the educational background, you've got the business experience, either whether it's building a software firm with Minerva or working in the lending space with some of these big financial services institutions. Um, while this TRaiCE may be a new company to a lot of people, it didn't happen overnight. There's a lot of hard work that got you to where you are, to where you get the right people together, you get the right capability, the right product, and it's all kind of coalescing into something that is starting to really take off. So that's pretty neat.
yeah.
All right, so give me some stats here. Like, how many people, how many clients, capital raise, things along those lines, things that you're interested in sharing.
Sure. So we are a rather small team as a startup. We have a 10-member team out of India, which is where the product team is, and I am based here in India with the team. That's apart from the 3-member founding team. So all in all, around 13-member team. We have 5 clients and several paid pilots at this point. We have clients across US, Germany, and India. 3 of the clients are in the US, 1 in India, and 1 in Germany. We have a payments provider in Germany that we work with for merchant monitoring. In the US, it's community banks and credit unions. There's also a small business lender, and primary use cases are around portfolio monitoring, prospecting, and a lot of third-party monitoring. So vendor monitoring, dealer monitoring, those kind of use cases. In India, we work with like the FedNav equivalent, the payment settlement infrastructure in India. So we work with them to monitor the participating banks on the fast payments network. So it's a case of a counterparty risk monitoring kind of a use case there.
Okay.
So those are at a high level. We have raised around close to 500,000 in mostly angel funds and then from the RevTech Labs. So that's where we are
Okay.
early in phase of revenue. So, but we are seeing some interesting pilots. So that's basically where we are now.
Right. That's pretty neat that you are so global, right? With US and Germany and India. And isn't there a potential for Canada as well? Pilot going on in Canada?
We are actually working with a large Canadian bank.
Okay.
So, but it's mostly for the US operations.
Oh, I see. I see. Okay. Okay. So just a sidebar. How do you deal with sentiment analysis in those different geographies? Like, so you've got language difference, but then
Right.
you also just have a sentiment difference, right? I mean, are you retraining a model? How does that work?
Joe can take that.
No, not really. I think primarily English, it's not adjust for the regional differences. It's English as a I'm sure the training is done for example, the UK versions or US versions, but otherwise, my understanding is that it doesn't make a huge difference from
Okay.
a regional standpoint. I don't think so.
Okay. I don't know.
And
I don't know.
in terms of the languages, Kevin, natively we process most of the major languages. So with the German provider that we are working, they have the primary business is out of Austria, but they have merchants across Germany, the Nordic region, and most of Europe. So Denmark, Finland, Netherlands, and all of it. So we do see news and reviews in all of these languages, and we process those natively. So and so since, like I said, most of the major languages are natively supported. Now, there are a host of languages which probably are not natively supported, but then we can always do a translate and then do a sentiment analysis.
Okay. That's impressive. That's neat. Okay, let's pause for just a second. Let's do a bit of an icebreaker. It's always weird to have the icebreaker in the middle, but it's a fun part. Okay, so the news in AI that's coming out all the time is always so fantastical. It's like I see headlines every day, whether it's from some of the sites that I monitor or some emails that come in. Um, and I look at some of these articles, these headlines, and I'm like, that can't be real. Like that was totally manufactured headline. That's not right. And I look into it like, oh my gosh, it is real. So I have a few headlines here that there's six of them. Three of them are real, three of them are fake. And you have to figure out which ones are real versus fake. Of course, what did I use to go create the fake ones? But ChatGPT because it worked pretty well. All right, so here we go. I'll start off with one. Um, Number one, Cognition has released AI software engineering agent Devin that is capable of autonomously delivering software.
That's true story.
True? What
Yeah.
do you think, Sony?
If Joe says true, it's true.
Now, do you know it's true or you think it's true? Joe, do you know it's true or do you think it's true?
I think I read this, Devin, and so
Yeah,
I know it's true.
I
Yeah.
should have said Devin. Yeah, that's true. Um, so we've been looking at Kingsman and it's not available to use yet, but some of the demos that they're showing are pretty impressive where um, yeah, it's a software engineer in a box that just it'll take a requirement and it'll start building software and it'll build tests and make sure those tests work and it'll iterate on itself and explain to you what it's doing and why. It's it's really impressive. And I don't know what it means for Kingsman software over the next year. Like that's my challenge is like maybe no one needs this anymore. Okay. All right. So you got that one right. All right. Keeping score. I don't know. Okay. All right. Freud AI. Freud AI, I guess it's like Sigmund Freud. Freud AI detects unknown human emotions, expanding psychological models. So I guess this AI was finding patterns in human, like you mentioned sentiment analysis.
Mhm.
So Freud AI detects unknown human emotions, expanding psychological models. Real or fake?
I think that's fake.
I think it's real again.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, that was fake. That was
Okay.
fake. I
Freud.
don't know whether I feel better or not. Hmm. Okay. AI machines develop their own language, excluding humans. So the AI machines have developed their own language and they're starting to exclude humans from their conversations.
I
That's
read
fake.
this somewhere, but I'm still not sure if it's
Right?
real or fake.
I know, right?
And that's when people start thinking about all those Terminator movies and other things that
I
you
know,
read
I
about.
know.
You let them loose, and then before you know, you're out of the picture.
So I look at that and go, that is very feasible. What do you
It's very,
think?
it's
You
very
going real
feasible,
or
but
fake?
I think
I
it's
think
fake. Yeah.
Sony, what was that you said?
I think it's fake.
Fake? It is fake. It is fake. But it's not
But I
unrealistic,
read,
right?
I read that.
It may,
So
you know, that could be.
here's the problem with all the hallucination that we talk about, right? Uh, you see it written in so many places, you come across it, and then it's very difficult to distinguish whether it's real or fake.
Yeah.
Uh, that it's very difficult now. It's just so difficult.
I wouldn't I wouldn't put it past AI to start coming up with its own language. I mean, we're using AI very generically here, right? Like AI is not a thing. AI is a capability. It's not like there's one AI thing that's doing stuff, but I could certainly see AI start to like the English language has to be fairly inefficient at some level. Clearly, that's why computers talk in ones and zeros. But there's probably some other way to convey uh, thought than English language, right? It's not an optimized language. But anyway, all right, number four, Viggle, Viggle allows for 3D video face and body swapping.
Uh,
3D video face and body swapping.
I believe that is real,
Joe?
or I feel it's real. I
Yeah,
wouldn't say I believe, but it sounds real.
yeah. I'm not sure. I think
yeah.
yeah.
So I just saw this last night. Um, there's memes going around social media. So there is a rapper, Little Yachty, that kind of comes from backstage onto stage to some big, huge crowd of people. It's one of those stages that kind of juts out into the audience. And there's this is real, of course. This is a real headline. So on the top, it shows Little Yachty coming from backstage, going out onto the stage, and all these fans, and he's like doing his dance and whatnot. But people have been face swapping that with like Elon Musk in an astronaut uniform, or the Joker from Batman movies. So like now everyone's just face and body swapping into anything. And so I can only mean if only I can only imagine what this might mean for our election cycle, our presidential election cycle coming up
Yes.
soon. You know, someone's going to put Joe Biden or Donald Trump on this little yachty meme, and we'll never know what's real anymore. It's crazy.
Yep.
Okay, number five, AI helps archaeologists decode ancient scripts.
Yeah. This is real.
That I think it's possible.
Yeah, that's real. Yeah, I saw that too. Um, it's like a Rosetta Stone, right? It's some sort of like ancient Sanskrit or something from like um what's the like Babylonians or something like that, and they're able to figure out what the actual characters mean, right? Because these are all pictography. Um, yeah, I don't know how they would do that. Like, I can't even imagine how that would actually work, but it does. But then again, I don't know how people would do it normally. Like, how would you do that manually? Because they figured out all sorts of like I hear about the Rosetta Stone. I don't exactly know how the Rosetta Stone actually worked, but anyway. All right, last one. AI wins Nobel Prize in Literature for the first fully AI written novel.
That's fake. Yeah.
It's fake?
That's fake. Yeah.
Winning a Nobel Prize? That sounds fake. I
Okay,
mean,
it is fake, but you know what's going to happen, right? It's going to happen. We just have to we have to be ready for it. I think that's why
Yeah.
all the Hollywood
Only,
was striking over the summer, right? Is because or over the winter is because they were worried about AI taking over their jobs. Novelists too.
you know,
yep.
Kevin, I think the if Nobel committee is kind of a AI driven, right? They replace all the politics out of it and put a machine learning algorithm to select the novel, then probably we will have a winner from an AI written
Yeah,
novel.
yeah, sure. Because they're gonna just like humans would vote for who they know, the AI will vote for what they know.
Right.
You know, one of the other suggestions that I got about a fake article was a fully AI jury convicted a defendant, like put them in jail. And you're like, that's scary. But then I thought, well, they would be the most impartial jurists, right?
Yes, yes. I read something similar to that. I think it was tested on, parallelly they run the algorithm based on all the rules and then see
Okay.
how the judge come up with and see the differences. So,
Yeah.
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 The only thing there, caveat there is, Kevin, it depends on how it's trained.
Sure.
If it's an impartial training, like you actually fed everything that was ever, I mean, all the cases ever done and the verdicts that came out, then it will probably be impartial to an extent.
yeah.
But if it were selectively trained, then
What
it's
if
anyone's
you
guess.
but if you put all the existing uh cases and verdicts, I'm sh th th those are probably biased themselves, right? Like,
That's true, but
right?
you probably would be putting all the rules, I mean, all the legal framework as well, right?
Oh, I
So
see. Yeah.
assuming
Okay.
that all of it is there,
Yeah.
and it could make more impartial, unbiased decision, then yeah,
Maybe each jury should have an AI 13th jurist, right? If there's normally 12 jurors, you have
right.
a 13th AI and see what they come
Mm.
up with.
Yes, yes,
Mm.
yeah.
And that'll be interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Let's get back into trace here. We sidebarred enough. So the unstructured data and the sentiment analysis. What are you? You mentioned you have a score. What's your branded score name?
It's called the Business Sentiment Index. We call it the BSI.
Okay. You need some fancy naming around that. You need some sort of
Yeah,
trace TM kind of thing, right?
yeah,
Um,
it's a BSI.
but something you mentioned earlier is that you're able to show the traceability, right? It's not just that the score went up or went down over a day or a week or a month. You get into the description as to why, right? Or at least pointing towards why it would have gone down. How do you do that? What does that look like?
Yep. I think first thing we do is get go to the sources and extract every piece of information that is relevant for the business, and then convert into a scorecard. And when we do that, we we do a retrospective scoring, right? Like 5 years. So we create a scorecard for 5 years. So you have like a score for a month. Every month you have a score. And now when so then we have like all this underlying articles, right? So if it's like a news article or a review or a discussion, anything like that. So we also have a link to that particular one. So if somebody wants to see, say for example, think of it as like a scorecard, the score dropping from say 900 to 800, right? So 100-point drop. Now you are curious to know. So automatically an alert will be sent to the portfolio manager. So then you are curious to know what actually caused this drop. So you come to the platform, click on that month, and you can actually see what all articles contributed to it. And also there
Okay.
are different weightages, like for news from Wall Street Journal gets maybe 90% weightage. The review from Yelp or Better Business Bureau, there might be only 10% weightage. So you can see all that in the platform, and then it's a full transparency, right? I mean, because bankers are very touchy about what is going into the algorithm. So we provide that observability to the entire pieces of information going into the scoring, and that's how we ensure. So that is very interesting to compliance and also regulators as well. Some of the one of the banks using us, regulators gave a very good feedback because it's traceable to the last the most granular level, like which is an article or a Yelp review. You can go read them, so
Yeah.
then you can decide. You can also check whether it is relevant or not and rescore it. All that you can do in the plan.
The regulators must love this, right? They must really appreciate that there's something else going on
Yeah.
beyond just a normal conventional credit risk management, portfolio management.
Yeah, in fact, we had meetings with the regulators. So we reached out to them, and he wanted to see the demo. So they said, yeah, this they can see a lot of application. Like a TPRM is one. The third party risk management vendor monitoring is very very hot these days, right? I mean, because of the bank fintech relationships and everything. So it's a useful because it organizes the entire data around the business in a timeline, and then you can drill down and see the details. So that is very very useful for them.
Sony, do you want to add in there?
So
Let's
Kevin,
say,
when you look at how bankers are using it, a portfolio manager or someone in the risk team, they start their day with an alert if there is one.
mhm.
Imagine there is a news which had some red flags in it, some fraud or something being reported. The the team would get an alert saying that the business sentiment index dropped by a certain points and this red flag was noticed, which is how they start their day. Then they know they have to drill deeper to find out what happened. They can go into the application, they can see the specific news, the link to the news, they can read the news. If there is more than one, they can see all of that. So we provide that entire traceability. We provide automated alerts to let them know when they start their day, as soon as they are in. And that's how people are using it today.
Right. Yeah, it's just it's another radar, I guess, of knowing you have to look deeper, right? So if you do see a red flag, you're like, okay, well, someone left a bad Yelp review. Not that big of a deal. It happens, move on. But the Wall Street Journal had an expose on this company and it looks really bad. You need to pick up the phone and call that client and ask them what's going on. So
Yeah.
it,
Right.
it gives the bankers much more line of sight into what is going on with all their clients without having to physically follow them, or not physically follow them, but like spend all their time and energy actively following them.
And we have also seen
Right.
cases where, it doesn't come into the mainstream news in the beginning, right? So we have seen a case study where there were a lot of complaints from users on Yelp and Better Business Bureau, and that was happening for months. Then it became too loud that news agencies started picking it up,
Oh,
right?
interesting.
But when you're using Trace, you're getting those signals early on because you're seeing all these customer reviews which are pretty bad. And as a relationship manager or someone in the risk team, what you would do is you would want to know why so many customer complaints are coming. Because news will not happen with the first customer review. It's probably going to take months for it to reach a stage where it's too large for a news agency to ignore.
Right. Maybe that should be another client base for you is all the news agencies to to bubble up information for them so they can write an article about that.
We haven't thought about that, but that's a great point as well.
All right. Well, if that takes off, I want a commission.
And absolutely.
So with your typical client base being community banks and in the U.S. And others, but when you walk into a sales situation, what I like about your solution is that you're not trying to replace some other solution, right? You're not trying to be better at statement spreading. You're not trying to be better at underwriting, right? You are trying to add something to their portfolio management process. Does that make that easier? Because there might be some integrations there, but no one has to do a business case to swap out an existing platform. There's no incumbent, if you will. Does that make life easier?
Yes. I think they instantly recognize this as an added dimension, into their toolkit. It's not really replacing anything, right? I mean, because they still want to use other pieces of information, and will be an added one. So it's kind of, and also they are doing something similar, right? Their underwriters are now going into 5 different or 10 different sites and trying to consolidate or Google search and other things, which is like pretty difficult process, right? I think, and now if you have like a 10,000 businesses in your portfolio, it's impossible to do it, right?
Right.
So I think they see the value of cutting down at least like 90% of the efforts around, kind of going ahead and gathering information. That is certainly there. And then more proactive, right? Where we are positioning this is the proactive account monitoring space, which comes before the delinquency, right? Now, most of these community banks that we go to, they have a strong relationship banking. Now, if they know in advance something is going to happen, there are many risk mitigations they can do. Like, say they can, if it's like unsecured position, they can make it a secured position, like get a
Mm-hmm.
piece of collateral or something, right? And then worst cases, they can cut the line. Say if it's like $100,000 line of credit, and they can cut the line and say no more drawing from the line. That is another risk mitigation strategy, right? So in between that, there are many things they do through relationships. So that is where we are positioning this, and it is really resonating with what they do on a daily basis.
Is that your target market, like small business banking? Or do you get into wholesale? Do you get into commercial lending? Like what's your level? It could be all levels.
Yeah. Uh, I mean, I think as long as they want to track and monitor a business, we are okay. I think we found that at a corporate lending level or commercial lending level, we get a lot more data
Hmm.
compared to small business level. But then small business, they have this advantage of, say, for example, a customer facing business like a restaurant, or those kind of dental places or professional services. They have a lot more review data,
Hmm.
right? Yelp
Right.
reviews, Google reviews, and so it's the blend. I think people are finding a lot of use cases in the lower end of the spectrum too, like small business banking as well.
It's probably harder to find that data too, right? Like if your company is Boeing, you can easily see in the news that Boeing is
Yes.
struggling
Yeah.
right now. But if you're like a dental practice, like you said, yeah, it's harder to find those things, that information.
Yeah.
Right. And
That's
Kevin, sorry, Jeff.
No, I was just going to finish up saying, there was a McKinsey article recently about how this whole thing works. It works like this is like a binary switch. What we are providing is, which is like an alert. You have like sometimes there won't be anything on this business for a long time, but suddenly something happens, right? So then that triggers the review mechanisms and everything, which is worth it. Just keep monitoring all the business in your portfolio is worth it, because sometimes this spike will happen, and it's very useful for them, because when you have very little information, but even from a theoretical standpoint, it's called information value is very high for that kind of a small information, right? So that is what happening in monitoring like this. So go ahead, sorry.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I was just adding to it. I mean, that was a great point. Thanks, Joe, for bringing that. When you look, we are talking to a large bank, and they have corporate as well as small business. Now, most of the large banks will have Bloomberg and other licenses,
Mm.
and Bloombergs typically cover all the large corporates, even the mid-sized ones. But when it comes to small businesses, you don't have a lot of data point that you have today. Banker, the portfolio team still has to go to the internet and see if something is happening. And usually, if you have thousands, like Joe said, you cannot monitor, we cannot manually be tracking all these thousands of businesses, right? That's where we come in because we have automated the whole process. If there is something, we would pick it up, we will score it, we will send them alerts. So as long as they know that, there is think of it like a automated assistant or an analyst sitting there and
Like an analyst. Yeah.
everything out there, bringing it nicely on a timeline with the score and the explainability for you to consume.
Yeah, it got me thinking that one of my clients is does investment banking research, sell side research, and they do have an analyst. They're not working with big companies like Boeing. They're working with smaller companies that recently went IPO, and there's tens of thousands of those companies. And yeah, they have an analyst that's looking at all that information right now. So I bet they could benefit from that. So you can focus on the more important things.
Right. So it's like we're not trying to replace analysts, but we can make them far more productive.
Yes.
Help them focus on the right things. And even if they were to increase their portfolio, they don't need to increase the team. Now, with the existing team, they can increase the size of their portfolio. They can go after more businesses.
Yep. Joe, you mentioned or alluded to the third-party risk management. So if we move beyond the credit risk management and portfolio management, how can Trace be used for third-party risk management and vendors?
Yeah, this came as a one in the RevTech Labs. We had Teresa Burton. So she was our advisor. So it came from her, and she said, I am filling out all this, checklists for vendor monitoring stuff, and Trace could fill in a lot of pieces there. So that's one thing. And then second eye opener was when we installed the product in one of the banks here in California. So they said, okay, monitor this, but also monitor all of our vendors. So they gave us a list of vendors and other parties they deal with, even the apartment associations and other things. So anything that they sponsor events and everything. So they wanted to add the full list. So that's when we really realized, right? I mean, there is a need for this because ultimately we are monitoring businesses. So they wanted to see, are they doing okay in the market? Is there any wrong news or bad media or anything on them? So it fits very well with the TPRM as well. So we kind of developed that a little bit with Teresa. So that's how, we started positioning this for TPRM as well.
Yeah, that does make a ton of sense. And we at Kingsman we fill out those forms all the time, but it's a one and done kind of thing, right? Maybe it's once a year, but no one's paying attention. And if you're a company that has 10,000 vendors and one of those vendors does something inappropriate or bad or something you don't want aligned to your branding, you want to know quickly that that's happening. Yeah, I could see that. Okay. What about you mentioned earlier like dealers. Help me understand that.
Yeah, that's another bank-driven use case. We are discovering this. I mean, same thing is used because bankers are very creative, right? When they see some tool, they know how to use it for their own. So the dealer monitoring came as just like that. We were talking to a bank and they had a $1 billion solar lending portfolio. So that is actually consumer, really speaking, right? I mean, because you're lending to the consumers, but how consumers get this loan is through a dealer. They go to the dealer for solar installation, and then the dealer will facilitate all that loan approval process through the bank. But ultimately, bank is lending to the consumer. But if the dealer is doing something, say botched installation or,
Sure.
not providing the right service, the consumer will go and delinquent on the bank loan, because they are not very clear, like who
Yeah,
is
yeah.
it. So that is the indirect lending use case, and which is like a dealer monitoring is very important for the bank because some dealers they found say things like Pink Energy, right? I mean that is one that really went bankrupt, and dealers like that is causing disproportionate amount of losses to the bank portfolio. So they quickly understand that. So now if they know in advance these guys are getting into trouble through Yelp reviews or Better Business Bureau reviews, they can scale down, right? I mean, and they can go slow on lending or even stop accepting loans through that dealer. So
Right.
that's a use case. And if they go bankrupt, that's also big loss to the bank because a lot of in between deals and money is in between, so all that can be at risk. So that's another use case we found very interesting to solar industry specifically, and then it is true for even auto dealers, right? When auto
Yeah,
dealers are,
sure.
banks want to monitor auto dealers, so that's one thing trending pretty high these days. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, anywhere you might have some sort of an installation that could go poorly. Um, I don't know, I'm
Yeah.
thinking like medical practices, right? Like cosmetic medical services and
Yeah, that's
right?
the one big one. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
So how can I go get my Kingsman score? Like is that also a market? Is like as an example, I can go to Experian and see my personal credit score and I can monitor why it's that way. Like there was a delinquency many years ago or extended about like I know how to improve it, right? Like Credit Karma
Mm.
will teach you how to improve it. Is that a thought you guys have or
So there was a marketing that we had at some point where we said, come and score your own business or
hmm
bring five businesses you're interested in. Now, the thing is, you need some capital behind you to run because
Sure.
what if thousands of companies and want to monitor their score, right? So at this point the capability is there within the platform, but the it's more it's the resources that puts a constraint for us
Sure.
to
Yeah. Yeah.
offer that service.
Okay. But it's doable. I mean, it makes
It's
sense
so
though. I mean, it's
think of it like for personal investment purposes as well. You are in the stock market, you want to track a few businesses that
okay.
you're invested in or you're interested to invest in, you can monitor all of them.
Right. Yeah, sure. It's personal investor. Yeah, I
But
mean
if somebody
all
wants
this
to know, yeah, sorry, if Kingsman wants to know the score, they can always, I mean, we can always set it up, without. Only thing is, you cannot just go there and see right away. We will have to set it up right now. So,
sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, sure, as things start to snowball, like as more banks start to use it, more businesses are going to care about what their digital footprint is.
mhm,
And so they'll want to know what theirs is and how they can improve it. Yeah.
yeah,
Right
Right.
now it's all very ad hoc. I
yeah,
mean, from a funny story from a Kingsman standpoint, so there's Glassdoor, right? You know, the where you can
Right.
yeah,
rate your employees can rate employers. And we received a mediocre review. And like we wanted to respond to it and see what someone's concern was, and maybe we could learn something from it. And it said, yeah, just an average company. And their job description was a product, uh, uh, a plant manager in London, in the UK. We're like, we don't have any people in London, in the United Kingdom, and we don't do plant managers. You're like, someone just posted on our site that was
Right.
clearly wrong. And now we're like, how do we improve that? Because if someone else goes and sees that, so we're not trying to debate it like we disagree with your opinion. You're like, clearly it's just not right. So we want to find a way to clean it up. But I would want to know where else are we being like incorrectly um, uh, uh, reviewed, right? Whether it's
right, right,
Glassdoor or
yeah.
some other place. So
Yeah.
now I'm
So
like,
that's
what?
a good, I think in the future, something like MyFICO, right? You can sign up
Yeah, right,
MyFICO,
sure.
pay a fee and do it. I think that's a good idea for the future, really.
Now, one thing, like you brought an interesting point, Kevin. So when we look at the score that we built, right? Like Joe mentioned earlier, 90% weightage goes to news. And there's a reason behind it. We feel like news is the more balanced medium out there in terms of providing information. Because reviews, like you said, you wouldn't find too many people going to any review site to give a positive review. It's heavily skewed in terms of you go there to usually to complain or to raise an unsavory experience, right?
Right.
When it comes to social media, you have to take with a pinch of salt. It's always there's a lot of noise in there.
Right.
So different platforms we have seen different trends. Review platforms tend to be very negative, and we see that in the score that we have specifically for that platform. So every platform has got its own score, and then we have the aggregate BSI. The BSI is a little more balanced because of the news element in there. So that's also something that I just wanted to bring up.
Yeah, that makes sense. I like to think I do my small role in pushing back on that negative sentiment. I only post when I have a very good experience. Because yeah, everyone just likes to complain on social media, but there's a lot of good work being done out there. Um, so you mentioned community banks and as a target client, right? Because it's probably easier to go talk to the right person, less bureaucracy, and they probably need to know, like you mentioned, relationship banking. Their companies are harder to find, and so that makes more sense for them. Are you working with some of um, the core banking platforms in that market space and trying to bolt on something? So whether it's FIS or Jack Henry or Q2, things along those lines?
Yeah, we do have that in the roadmap. We have something going on with FIS at the moment. We had some initial discussions with Jack Henry, but we posted for the time being. Q2 is also something that we are interested in. So we are trying to see as a fintech startup, sometimes it's easier to go on the back of an established firm like an FIS or a Q2 because it becomes easier. There are multiple ways to bolt your solution into what they have and offer them, it's assuming that the other side also has a benefit in doing that. Like you have a commercial lending suite of applications, we can bring something of value to add to that commercial lending suite of applications. And similar with different platforms that we have talked to. But for us, it's once we establish the credibility with that provider, it's an easier way for us to reach a larger client base than trying to go all out alone.
Right.
The credibility comes in. A lot of the things like the vendor approval and all those things are taken care of. So it's something definitely it's in our roadmap and we are working towards it.
Okay. So you guys have to go through the vendor management process and the third party risk. Like, hey, we can help you with this. We can do our own score. We'll give you our own score. Then you can provide scores for all the others. So maybe you get a 2-for-1. Once you're selling to the credit portfolio management team, then you can also sell to the vendor management once you get brought on board. Right? You get a 2-for-1.
Yeah, good that you mentioned, Kevin. One of the banks, when they gave us the vendors to monitor, our name was also there on the list. Just funny.
This is where you have to start putting lots of good Yelp reviews for yourself. All right, just kind of wrapping up. What's in store for the next 12 months? Do you have fundraising? Do you have product announcements? Client growth metrics? Like what does the next 24 months look like? Or sorry, 12 months.
More of like client growth, expanding to more community banks and credit unions. While we have clients in India and Germany, those came by chance. Those were leads that came to us, or we had some connections which got us those leads. But otherwise, our focus is in the community banking and credit union side in the US, and also working on some of these partnerships with the likes of FIS, because it gives us, again, trying to reach to this similar segment, right? So product market fit, establishing that a bit more within some of the segments that we talked about is the roadmap for the next 12 months. Onboard maybe another 15 to 20 clients during this period. And then get to 1 million in ARR. That's our immediate short-term goal.
Okay. Yeah, it's a great goal.
Yeah, I just want to add one more on the product development side, Kevin. What we put on hold because of the funding issues and other things, but something that in our roadmap is ever since we got into fintech sandbox, we had a partnership with Experian, and Experian had they given us like 100,000 businesses, historic information, right? It's called data extracts from the history, and we want to use that and redevelop the product, into, say, for example, if we can develop the product in a much better way, blending bureau data and also make it more predictable, a score, right? So that is in our product roadmap, and it's on hold right now, but sooner we are going to work on it, and we already have the data from Experian, but we couldn't use it yet, so that is next in the roadmap for us.
Okay. Yeah, get a few more clients, add to the product, get a few more
Yeah,
clients, add to the product. Yeah, keep going back and forth.
correct.
Great. Do you have fundraising coming up?
The immediate focus is to get to that 1 million ARR
Okay.
product
Okay.
market fit. I think other things will naturally follow. It's probably not the best climate to raise funds.
Well, yeah, that's true. That's a great point. Yes.
Mm.
Hopefully we're coming out of that soon as
Yeah.
as values have stabilized, they've gone down, but they've stabilized as inflation and interest rates have stabilized. Hopefully all this comes back.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So if someone wants to get in touch with you, beyond the website, are you guys going to be in any sort of incubators or events that you're speaking at, or like where can somebody see you if they want to see you or reach out to you?
About accelerators and incubators, we don't have any immediate plans to
Okay.
join any of them at the moment. But we definitely might look at the ICBA Think Tech Accelerator program, because that's a great way to reach out to community banks.
Hmm.
It's something that we are looking to apply. Otherwise, website, LinkedIn,
Okay.
we routinely have blogs coming out. So at least 1 or 2 blogs a month. Once in 2 months or once in a month, we publish case studies. So that's a good avenue. We have a YouTube channel where we publish content. Events, I think the next big event is probably sometime in September, October, that kind of time frame. So maybe at that time, we probably would be looking at attending some of the events.
Gotcha. Yeah, I would think that Barry's organization, or the chapter he's involved in Charlotte, right? The Global Association of Risk Professionals.
Yeah.
That seems to be
Right.
like a good group to get involved with, I would think.
Yes.
Okay.
So we are
And
we are also looking into the community bank associations in various states, starting with California, Chicago, that region, so that it's also kind of close to us, founders, so we can travel easily. And and Vegas is nearby, so we are looking into various events that are coming up, so we can present ourselves there.
Okay. Yeah.
and
Who
of
doesn't
course,
like?
Charlotte, good excuse for us to go back to Charlotte and meet with RevTech Labs and
Yes.
everyone.
Yeah. Well, I'd rather go to Vegas. How about that? I'll meet you guys in Vegas. We'll have a good time. Well, Sony, Joe, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. I think you guys have a great story, great product. I love the fact, like I said, it is additive to the credit risk management process. I love the fact that you guys have been doing this for longer than anyone else that I've been speaking with, because you guys were kind of the leaders before it became cool. So yeah, best of luck to you guys. I'm really, really impressed.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having us. It's been a pleasure talking to you. and good luck to Kingsman Software and everything that you do.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Kevin, for having us. Echo Sony, and anything, partnership with Kingsman Software, or we are open for all that. Thank you so much for this time.
Awesome, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks to Bill Clarisi as our sound and video engineer. Thank you to Rashmili Vamula for our marketing support of the podcast on LinkedIn and other channels. And thanks to you. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Kingsman's Beyond the Build podcast, where we showcase interesting innovators from the Charlotte area. And until the next podcast, go build something awesome.